Lahat.
This is the Vice President of the Philippines.
Nagbilin na ako, ma'am. Pag namatay ako, sabi ko, huwag ka tumigil hanggang hindi mo mapatay sila.
She's threatening to kill the president if she's killed. Even though Filipino politics is known for high drama, this was extraordinary.
Right now, the tensions have already evolved into an open feud.
The political battle between President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Sara Duterte is playing out like a thriller. But there's more at stake than meets the eye.
Filipinos understand the underdog situation that they're in terms of geopolitics.
The Philippines is on the front line of China's territorial claims in the South China Sea and would play a major role in any US effort to counter a possible Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
The Philippines is a key ally for the US here in Asia. It is located in a very strategic spot.
But this alliance is under pressure as Sara Duterte backs closer ties with China, and her case is being helped by aggressive US tariffs.
Well, President Trump says the US has reached that trade deal with the Philippines.
Trump's presidency has upended just about every assumption you could have about America and the world.
The Philippines sits in the middle of the China-US power struggle. Which way it swings will have consequences far beyond its borders. Meet the Marcoses. This is former President Ferdinand Marcos and his wife and former First Lady Imelda Marcos, who you may remember is quite the fan of footwear. And this is their son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., also known as the current President of the Philippines. Now meet the Dutertes. This is Rodrigo Duterte, another former president, and his daughter, Sara Duterte, the current Vice President of the Philippines, who, 14 years ago, fell out with the sheriff. Problem is, President Marcos and Vice President Duterte were a team, but now they're at each other's throats and have very different visions for their country's foreign policy. Marcos Jr., referred to as Bongbong, has cultivated close ties with Washington, while his political rival has followed in her father's more pro-China footsteps.
Sara Duterte is trying to take a more neutral stance to it. She wants to work equally with both the US and China.
Any change in the direction of the Philippines' foreign policy stance will have an impact not only here locally, not only in Asia, but the world at large.
And here's why. The Philippines was a US colony till 1946. Located just south of Taiwan, the island chain is critical to the control of waters off the southern coast of China. Post-pandemic, its economy has grown steadily and faster than most of its regional peers.
The Philippines matters to the US as it's among its allies that it uses to secure trade routes and peace in the region since World War II.
But relations between Washington and Manila are caught up in the political feud we mentioned earlier. Marcos's term is due to end in 2028. Duterte is emerging as his likely successor. Their alliance was extraordinary to begin with, but their open hostility even more so. So how did things get so wild, and what can that tell us about what to expect next? Marcos Sr. led the country for 21 years, from 1965 to 1986. He and his wife are accused of stealing $10 billion from the state during his term, as well as torturing and killing thousands of political opponents. But to his supporters, Marcos Sr. was a hero who drove the Philippines' economic development. Former President Rodrigo Duterte served from 2016 to 2022. He pivoted the Philippines towards warmer ties with China and away from the US. Currently, he's in a prison cell in The Hague. More on that later. The alliance of these two prominent families was a sure path to power, uniting disparate factions of the country into what they branded the Uni Team. In the 2022 presidential election, Marcos and Duterte romped to victory.
So the 2022 elections is essentially a coalition of convenience between two political families, harnessing the votes from north and south of the country.
It did not take a long time before the Uni Team showed problems.
Sara wanted the position of defense secretary. She was given education, and things only got worse from there.
Her tenure within that Department of Education started to show that there were misuse of funds.
An allegation Sara denies. As part of that investigation, a trusted aide of Duterte's was detained. The vice president decided to go live on Zoom.
This country is going to hell because we are led by a person who doesn't know how to be a president and who is a liar.
Duterte claimed her life was under threat, and she had a contract killer ready to assassinate the president if she was killed.
Sara Duterte is known as a feisty personality here in the Philippines. She's really not afraid to speak her mind. But it was really shocking at that time when you have a president and a vice president who just a few years ago were projecting an image of unity. And here you have the vice president declaring an assassination threat on the president.
Is revenge from the grave a crime?
But the tensions between Marcos and Duterte did not end there. In March this year, Marcos government acted on an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court against Sara's father, former President Rodrigo Duterte.
He was charged by the International Criminal Court with the murder of dozens of alleged drug dealers, but human rights groups say the victims number in the thousands. He was flown to The Hague. But if this was supposed to hurt Sara, it backfired.
The Duterte clan heavily criticized this move. They portrayed this as also a surrender of Philippine sovereignty. So they said handing over the former president to the ICC was actually an act of kidnapping.
When kidnapping is allowed as a means of acquiring the jurisdiction of the accused, we think this too is a travesty of justice.
Just as the president and vice president split, so did their approach to foreign relations.
Under Marcos, the Philippines have allowed the U.S. to station more troops in more locations under their treaty agreements. There are now 9 locations in the Philippines, some of them very close to Taiwan, some of them facing the South China Sea, that the U.S. has access to and will rotate troops through, that will make investments, that will have a long-term presence.
Since Ferdinand Marcos came to power, he has really shifted the relationship with China and, of course, has moved much closer to the US.
Sara Duterte has been careful in portraying herself as pro-China.
There is no reason for you to lean towards the US. You have to always stay in the middle because you are not a part of the bigger conflicts.
She has said that the relationship between Beijing and Manila is not defined entirely by their tensions in the South China Sea.
And this is what those tensions look like. This footage is shot from a Filipino patrol ship being pursued by 2 Chinese vessels. Then this happens. The Chinese Navy vessel accidentally smashes across the bow of its sister ship. It's unknown if or how many Chinese sailors lost their lives in this collision.
Philippine vessels have been shown by authorities to have been water cannon, sideswiped, harassed by Chinese vessels.
China and the Philippines dispute who owns the islands and reefs in the South China Sea. China's vast claims are encompassed in what's known as the 10-dash line, which sweeps down from Taiwan to the Philippines, Malaysia, and up Vietnam's coast.
Nobody agrees with this, including a UN court that ruled in the favor of the Philippines, yet China is pushing full speed ahead with its insistence that it has sovereignty over pretty much the entire South China Sea.
China's rapidly expanding its navy and rejects the UN court's ruling. It says it's committed to upholding freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. The Philippines and its much smaller navy are overmatched. The country's foreign policy walks a tightrope, with Marcos and Duterte tugging in different directions.
The country is very vulnerable to Beijing's influence, and without the US there to back them, there's very little they can do.
US security guarantees are the bedrock of the Philippines' maritime strategy, but Trump's presidency is casting a shadow on these ties.
The Philippines, just like any other country basically in the world, is a target of President Donald Trump's trade anger and tariff wars.
Philippines exports to the US are being hit with a 19% tariff. President Marcos flew to meet President Trump in July this year in the hope of getting a better deal. It didn't help.
Marcos got stuck with the same rate as everyone else did, despite the fact that they have opened up this access to US defense.
As Trump redefines America's role in the world, nations like the Philippines are left to wonder, can they still rely on the US?
The US is losing its commitment to its role as a peacemaker, and Trump is seeing these approaches to free trade and alliances as more of a hindrance to the United States.
Meanwhile, the feud between Duterte and Marcos continues. Duterte has pulled off an incredible reversal of fortunes, avoided impeachment for threatening to have the president killed, and impeachment for alleged corruption. She's now, with her more China-friendly policies, the most popular candidate to be the next Philippine president.
After the arrest of her father, her popularity started to increase again, and the ratings for Marcos started to decline.
The Trump administration is exerting economic pressure on its allies in the region that could give the Philippines more reason to lean away from the US.